been a number of years since there has been an open seat for U.S. Senate. This year, the LMA is fortunate to have the leading U.S. Senate candidates address our membership. The order in which they will address us has been decided randomly.
Thank you all, Mayor Roy, Mayor Fields. Thank you both and the cities of Alexandria and Pineville for hosting this, and thank you to the Louisiana Municipal Association for hosting this event. I'm humbled and very grateful to be here. The reason why I'm humbled and very grateful to be here is because you are where government should be strongest and best resourced, because you are the closest to the people. And that's what our entire United States government is designed to supposed to do. So I'm also very grateful for all of your service, and you should give yourself a round of applause and take a few seconds of my time. Ladies and gentlemen, there's lots of labels that get used in politics: Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. As you listen to me tonight, I'd just like you to remember this. The label that I think of when I think of myself as someone that's putting himself out there to serve Louisiana and the United States is as an American. Yes, I'm a dad, a husband, a grandfather, a brother, a son, a Christian, but I'm an American, and we need Americans to step into the breach up in Washington, D.C., because we've been sending folks to Washington, D.C. that just don't understand what it means. What it means when they say and take that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and make sure that the law of the land is followed, and this is the law of the land. I believe in limited government. I believe in individual responsibility. I believe in financial accountability in government. And most of all, I believe in equality of opportunity for all of us. If you take the first letter out of each one of those beliefs, it spells the word life, because life is the first right declared by the United States of America in its first official document, the Declaration of Independence. We all have the inalienable right to life. And life begins at conception, ladies and gentlemen, when the third strand of DNA is created, when the baby is conceived. Because of those beliefs, I'm also a constitutionalist. But what's missing in Washington is a leadership. I learned my leadership skills over 3.5 decades of service in the United States Air Force, from the lowest enlisted rank to the rank of full colonel, outside of the political realm. That's what's missing, folks. I learned leadership in the energy industry after I left the Air Force, doing things like having the safest recovery in Hurricane Isaac that's ever been accomplished with the Entergy Corporation. Leadership. Leadership is getting folks to the table that disagree and getting them to find solutions to real problems without violating our principles, and that's what's been lacking in Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you about two things. And in each of these things is interwoven what I will do to help you. First is, my professional expertise is in national security primarily and the energy industry. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is weaker than it's been in my lifetime. We are not leading in the world, and the world is on fire because of it. Our allies can't trust us, and our enemies certainly don't respect or fear us. All you have to do is look at San Bernardino, 49 Americans dead and 50 wounded. Because of my professional military background, I know what needs to be done. I served in the Pentagon as a nuclear operations and strategy officer for George W. Bush and Secretary Don Rumsfeld and chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I wrote 3 pages in the Nuclear Decision Handbook. That's the nuclear football book that's carried with the president 24 hours a day. And after I survived the attack on the Pentagon on 9/11, I was asked to help write the response to the global war on terror And I know what needs to be done. We must first identify the enemy, find the enemy, target the enemy, and kill the enemy. At first, the enemy is Islamic jihadism. They currently go by the name of the Islamic State. We need people in Washington, D.C. that understand that, understand what that policy means, understand what it means to potentially make the decision to sacrifice our children in order for the world to be a place of liberty and prosperity and certainty, in our country most of all. We also have to secure our border and enforce our immigration laws. And I know how to do that. When I say that, I've commanded the 6th largest Air Force base in the world, 53,000 acres in mountainous terrain, most of it, in New Mexico, largely unfenced. I commanded a force of 650 law enforcement and security personnel that kept that border secure. And that border was within 3 days walking distance of the U.S.-Mexico border. And believe me, there are illegal aliens, narco-traffickers, narco-terrorists, and Islamic terrorists coming across that American border with Mexico. I know, I've seen the intelligence. None of them ever got through my border. Not even a Code Pink protester got through my border, because I was there to protect America's most precious national assets. So I know what it means. I know what it means to say we need to enforce our current law. Those are the big issues. And I know what it means to say we love our police. We want our police to have all the resources they need. That's part of national security. I've done it. I know what resources they need. I know what it's like to set a policy on the use of deadly force. We need more professionals that understand that in elected office in Washington, D.C. So that when they're asked to put a federal policy together that impacts the law enforcement officers that are sitting in this room and mayors that are sitting in this room, they can stand up and say, no, the folks down at the state and local level are the best ones to make those policies and decisions. Because what's happened in Baton Rouge, God bless the police officers and the community down there. I pray for them daily. I was heartbroken by that when I saw that happen. Their community, their law enforcement, and their elected officials, we should all be proud of. It was the outsiders that came in and caused all the problems. You are the ones that make those decisions, and I'm proud to know each and every one of you, because Louisiana is different, and I will work to continue to make Louisiana stay different so that you are empowered to make the best decisions. The second big idea is the economy is broken. Anybody thinks the economy here in this state is doing well? Please come talk to me during the reception, because I'm very interested in your ideas on why it's doing well. We're $19 trillion in debt. We can't do any of those national security things. We can't do any of those law enforcement things. We can't do any of those if this country is in so much debt that our grandchildren will be paying it off forever, and they can't afford to do it. So we've got to balance our federal budget. We've got to get spending under control. We've got to eliminate the IRS and get our tax code to where the income taxes are reduced or zeroed so that you are back in charge of how much taxes you pay. So that the federal capital that's trapped overseas by American corporations can come home, and we can bring back companies like Carrier and Ford and the GM division of Cadillac, and recreate those manufacturing jobs, and recreate the manufacturing base, and recreate the jobs base in this country, because we've been going about it the wrong way. We've got to eliminate regulation, whole pieces of regulation. Small businesses are being crushed by things like Obamacare today. I have a friend that has 400 employees. He pays $28,000 a month just because, just because Obamacare is causing that on him, a month. That's not a very big company. So ladies and gentlemen, I will help you. I'll push the resources back down to you. Resources for things like education. We'll eliminate Common Core and block grant the resources back to you. Things like the housing and urban development agency. We'll block grant the resources back to you so you can make the decisions on whether an able-bodied person should be able to stay in government housing or not. Because right now you can't make the rules. And we'll block grant the resources back to you on things like law enforcement so you can make the decision because you're the best folks to make the decision. Thank you very much. God bless Louisiana and may God save these United States.
Thank y'all very much. I wanted to say another thanks to Mayors BREAUX, Arsenault, and Hennigan, as well, of course, Mayor Fields and Mayor Roy. I have to also start my remarks off by saying that I actually feel like I've been sent here on a mission from Philadelphia on behalf of Mayor Jennifer Vadrine, who sends her greetings to all of you. She's going to watch this tape later, so I just want to make sure that I got it in. She's a wonderful woman, and certainly the city of Ville Platte has welcomed me with open arms. There y'all are in the back. And just one other note before I get started on a few remarks for you all here today. I do want you all to know that, you know, my friend is in the audience here, Mr. Derek Edwards. I've gotten to know him during the course of this campaign. And as we go about our daily lives and we try to find it in our hearts to work hard together to move Louisiana forward, I certainly would encourage all of you to get to know Mr. Edwards and say hello to him. He's quite a hero in my mind, and he's such an inspiration as I go along and campaign for United States Senate. As was mentioned, my name is Caroline FAYARD, and I would like to thank all of you, first off, regardless of your party affiliation, whether you're independent, Democrat, or Republican, for all the hard work that you do for us here every day on the ground in Louisiana. All too often in our cities and municipalities are succeeding these days, but it seems that Washington, D.C. is stuck in an endless cycle of gridlock. And I think that is in large part due to the leadership that we've been sending and resending to Washington over the years. And that's truly why I feel called to run for United States Senate at this time in history in this state that I so dearly love. Louisiana needs active leadership, people that are going to roll up their sleeves and work very hard across the aisle, put aside partisan political ego and perhaps their own political ambitions, and do what we can to move this country forward for all of us, and never have the stakes been higher than this election. I'm here to tell you that I believe I am the woman for this job. The brutal truth is that the old way of doing things in Louisiana, and indeed D.C., is failing us. We are struggling. I'm worried about the future of Louisiana. I'm worried about my future. I'm worried about yours, and I'm worried about the next generation. Just so you all know a little bit about my story, I was born and raised in Livingston Parish, and I grew up surrounded by people that worked hard at the local level to serve their communities and to make sure that working families in Louisiana had a fair shake. Mayor Jimmy Durbin was my mayor in Denham Springs when I grew up, and I knew that he was a big part of the LMA when he served in this capacity. My grandparents worked in local gas stations and police juries, and my parents ran a successful law practice in Denham Springs, Louisiana. I was raised with good Christian values, and yes, I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment Democrat. But I've been able, through the values instilled within me, good Louisiana values, to explore the world and get a great education. And I've come back home to plant my flag here and try very hard to move us forward. I've also been very privileged to start a business with my brother called Glow Airlines, which right now flies from New Orleans to Shreveport twice a day, and we're working on trying to connect the rest of Louisiana together. Why this is important is because I actually owe thanks to all of you in this room for helping us do that. Economic development requires cooperation, particularly at the local level. We've brought Glow to Shreveport, to Memphis, to Little Rock, and we're going to be expanding real soon to another route. And we were able to do that because folks on the ground, city council members, mayors, recruited us, worked with us, helped us cut through regulations and red tape to actually live a dream and bring real good jobs to Louisiana. 35 jobs here alone, 110 indirect jobs throughout our route network. And so again, I owe a debt of great gratitude to all of you for helping me do that. But more importantly, I'm running because we need to get back to the basics and work for what is right for our people in all communities across Louisiana. You all need a true partner in DC, and you need to have somebody who's going to be responsive to your concerns and work hard to build a long-term relationship with you. I'm asking you to give me that chance today. I'm going to fight for equal pay for equal work for all of us working women in Louisiana. We only get 65 cents on the dollar compared to the national average of 79 cents. That's downright wrong. It's not about ego, it's just about eating. Women work just as hard and they deserve equal pay. We need to talk about how we're going to raise the minimum wage and make it a livable wage for people. An honest day's pay for an honest day's work. Dignity is found in all that we do, and we should be rewarded for that. And particularly of interest to you all here in the municipality work, we have to close the online sales tax loophole, and there's a couple of reasons for that. We have to make sure that you all in the local communities are not an unfair disadvantage for people that are selling their products on the internet and you're not getting a fair return to your local businesses. Why do I say that? Well, because I'm a 37-year-old entrepreneur, and I live in an economy right now that if we're not careful, we're all going to get left behind. The future is coming at us quick, and we've got to be prepared. We have to have an articulate, intelligent voice in Washington, D.C. who can communicate our needs. I want to be able to stay in my hometown. I want to be able to stay in Louisiana, choose where I want to live, work, play, raise my family, but also be able to get my products to market and make sure that I'm giving a return to my local community. That requires us to be able to catch up with the future. We want a knowledge-based economy here in Louisiana that's resilient to hurricanes and BP oil spills and the political partisan winds of the day. We need to start talking about the future and start electing people that have a vision to get it done. Louisiana cannot be left behind. That's what we tried to accomplish with Glow Airlines, and with the help of our local partners, we've been able to do it. And I know that we can do it again if we send the right team, the right people back up to Washington, D.C. So again, like you, the type of leader that I want to be is somebody who fights for our state, but fights right for our state, picks the battles that we know that we must win. Make sure that we don't take our shiny balls and toys to the corner and pout. I want to be somebody who gets up every day proud to represent you because I'm a creature of Louisiana. I'm standing here, a product of this great state and all that we can do. And I thank each and every single one of you every single day for the opportunity to make sure that Louisiana continues to grow and prosper, not just here at home, but also in the eyes of the nation and, yes, the world. So I'm asking you today, because I know you are all can-do men and women. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care about your communities. Let's do this together. Let's together build a true partnership. Give me the chance to build a track record with you, a real relationship for Louisiana and Washington, D.C. Let me be your elegant and articulate voice for all the hopes and dreams of our futures. Together we can get it done. We live in a great state, and it's time that we get our fair shake. And I'm going to work hard each and every day, honestly, to make sure that happens. Thank you so much.
In 2014, the Gallup organization polled the American people about how they feel about government. 72% of the American people said they trusted local government. You know how many said they trusted the federal government? 24%. You know how many said they trusted the United States Congress? 7%. That pretty much says it all. You can't fool the American people. You know, I'm very proud of my record as state treasurer. But many of my accomplishments would not have been possible without some of the people in this room. As state treasurer, I'm the president of the Louisiana Asset Management Pool, LAMP we call it. Theo Sanders is here. He's our director. Stand up, Theo. We invest money for local government. We got about 650 members. We invest $1.3 billion. Since I've been treasurer, we've earned over $400 million on your money for your constituents. But I couldn't have done that without you. Many of you sit on my board of directors. As chairman of the Bond Commission, we have refinanced public debt at a lower interest rate and saved the taxpayers of Louisiana $1.4 billion. But I couldn't have done that without you because a lot of that debt was local debt. A few years ago, I passed a bill in the legislature called the I-49 Unclaimed Property Bond Program. Didn't cost taxpayers a dime. Didn't use anybody's unclaimed property. We generated $188 million to finish I-49 North and get started on I-49 South, and I couldn't have done that. Couldn't have gotten that through the legislature without the help of some of the people in this room. As state treasurer, I balanced 16 department budgets. That's 16 more than the United States Congress has. And in part, I learned how to do it by watching you. And I learned how to do it by watching my dad, who was a city councilman in a little town called Zachary. I believe that America's best days lie ahead. I believe we shouldn't fear our future. We ought to grab for it. I believe that America's future can be better than its present, and it can be better than its past. But folks, not if we keep going in the direction that we're going. The political elite in Washington, D.C. has forgotten what America's all about. You know what we need in our parishes today, in our cities? Same thing we need in our state. We need jobs. And there's a lot of economic pain in this country. Many of Americans have never recovered from the recession of 2008, and I don't need to tell you what's going on in Louisiana today. Now, there are two reasons why our economy is not as good as Americans deserve it to be. Number one, the national debt. It is strangling the American economy. It is $19 trillion. You know what that really means? That means that the United States Congress has spent $19 trillion more than it took in, and they borrowed the money to fill the hole. We ought to change the name of the United States Department of Treasury to the United States Department of Debt, because there is no treasurer there. Make America great again? You bet. But we need to make America solvent again. And where did they spend the money? Did they spend it on the roads that we desperately need? No. Let me give you a couple examples of where the United States Congress spent the money. They'll blame it on the bureaucracy, but they have to appropriate the money. They spent $1.5 million of taxpayer money to study the effects of Swedish massages on bunny rabbits. They spent $750,000 of our money on a soccer field for the Guantanamo terrorists. The VA spent $6.3 million on artwork for some of its facilities nationwide, and all the time our veterans were dying in their care. They spent $2.6 billion in disability benefits for Puerto Rico residents considered disabled because they couldn't speak English. They spent $370,000 to study whether mothers love dogs as much as they love kids. They spent $700,000 to the nation of gave $700,000 to Vietnam to help them restore a Buddhist temple, and I could go on and on and on. The second reason for so much economic pain in America today, and as a result, so much anger, is what the political elite in Washington, D.C. has done to our economic structure. Here's what I see in America today. I look around and I see too many undeserving people at the top getting special treatments and bailouts. And I see too many undeserving people at the bottom getting handouts. And I see the folks in the middle, the people who get up every day and go to work and obey the law and pay their taxes, they're getting the bill. And we can't pay it anymore because our health insurance has gone up thanks to Obamacare, and our tuition has gone up. Not every kid gets a top scholarship, and our taxes have gone up. But I'll tell you what hadn't gone up: our income. Median household income in America today is actually $4,000 less than it was in 2002. And that is why Americans are so angry. And that is why Americans feel stuck. They were promised hope and change, and all they've gotten is decline and uncertainty. Now, there's enough blame to go around with the political elites in Washington, D.C., but I'll tell you who is as responsible as anybody else. The Ritz-Carlton Democrats and the big government Republicans in the United States Congress, because they're in charge of the money. Now, we've got some good members of Congress, but as a group, for the last 8 years, I can't figure out what they've been good for. I can't. What they've done to the American people, they ought to be ashamed of. They ought to hide their heads in a bag. Look, this country was founded by geniuses. But on a lot of days, I think it's being run by idiots. You can't fix stupid, but you can vote it out. Let me tell you what else I believe. I believe in God. I believe in protecting the unborn. I believe in more freedom, not more free stuff. I believe government is too big. It tries to do too much, and therefore does it badly. I believe we ought to enforce America's immigration laws. I believe if you hate cops just because they're cops, the next time you get in trouble, you ought to call a crackhead. I believe that love is the answer, but you probably ought to own a handgun just in case. I believe in the dignity of work. You can't be for jobs if you're against business. And I believe one more thing. I believe that America's best days lie ahead if we send the right people to Washington. Now look, most of you know me. I try not to be rude, but I speak my mind. My job's to protect taxpayers. I'm not part of the club in Baton Rouge, and I won't be part of the club in Washington, D.C. Send me to Washington to fight for you. We're not going to win every fight, but by God, we ought to refuse to be beaten. I think this country and this state are worth fighting for. And may God make his face to shine upon us all. Thanks for the privilege to talk to you today.
Well, great to be with you today, LMA. Thank you so much for coming out for us. There's plenty of things you could be doing. I want to pay homage, first of all, to our law enforcement officers. No one has been more maligned than our law enforcement officers over the past 2 years. If you are a law enforcement officer, would you please stand up in this room? Do we have law enforcement officers here? Anyone who? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your service. You know, oftentimes our law enforcement officers, our first responders are criticized. Of course, there are a few bad apples in every barrel. I'm a physician. There are bad apples in that barrel too. There are many, but 99.9% of our law enforcement officers are out there working every day to do what is right for you. And we owe it to them to do what's right to them and to protect them as well. So thank you, our people in blue, for what you do. Well, if you want to know who I am and what type of senator I will be, you need to know who I am as a person. I was born in a working class home. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. My dad worked for the power company. My mom was disabled. I remember sitting around the kitchen table with them, watching them wring their hands, trying to figure out how we're going to make the budget stretch to the end of the month. I learned a lot from them. And here's a lesson I learned, a lesson I was taught. They said, John, you can be anything in America, anything, if you work hard enough for it. This is the land of opportunity. Although, folks, I'm not sure in the future it will be the land of opportunity. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. So anyway, when I was 11, I became convicted of two things. One, Jesus Christ is my Savior, who gave me the grace of life so I could be with him in the afterlife. And number two, I was so inspired by my grandmother, who was a nurse, and I wanted to learn more about what she did. And she would tell me these stories about hospitals and healthcare. So I became convicted. It was my calling to become a doctor one day. And I studied hard, as she said. And just before leaving high school, my dad died suddenly of a heart attack at age 43, leaving my disabled mom, my little brother and sister, and myself to fend for ourselves. But prayers were answered. They provided me some loans, and I worked hard, working my way through college, got through in 3 years. Then I went on to medical school. The United States Navy awarded me a scholarship. But you know what? It was such a privilege to wear the uniform of the United States Navy, and I did. I wore it proudly. Along the way, I acquired a wife. No, the Navy did not assign the wife to me. They didn't find her for me. I had to find her for myself. And we've been married 38 years, and we have 4 kids. Thank you. I'm very proud of that. And we have 3 grandchildren, and we're very proud of them as well. So I set up my medical practice after I got out of the military in Minden, Louisiana, North Louisiana town. And I had to beg on my knees to find somebody to lend me the money to build an office building. And finally, somebody broke down and did it. We paid it off in 5 years. And then I decided to go out on my own in an independent business. And I started some restaurants, some franchise restaurants and other sort of concepts, and built a business that exists today with 500 employees. Now, why do I tell you that? Why is that important? Because I guarantee you very few people in Washington today know anything about creating jobs. And you know what? That is the problem that you suffer under today, the burden of a low tax base, the lack of money for highways, for policemen to support them. Why are these a problem? Because we have an economy that's terrible. It's flat as a pancake. And you're not going to have the tax base until you get jobs created. And that's what we needed in Washington. Now, I disagree with my friend John Kennedy that as wasteful as $1 million for art is, that is not the cause of the problem, ladies and gentlemen. The cause of the problem, and by the way, I voted against all of that nonsense. There may be other members of Congress, but I do not vote for that stuff. I'm very conservative, fiscally and otherwise. What we have is lack of jobs has made our food stamp costs go up 40% in the last 8 years. Taking off restrictions, workforce requirements in welfare has made it balloon to $1 trillion a year. It's completely gobbling up our budget. Medicare will run out of money in 9 years and Social Security in 16 years. But that's not the only problem. We've had 2 huge tax increases in the last 8 years, another wet blanket on the economy, and on top of that, the Washington bureaucracy has created huge regulations and requirements that are just completely flattening our economy. So ladies and gentlemen, in your venue, in your cities, in your districts, if you want to see good results, if you want to see being able to serve those who have elected you, we have got to get this economy back and going. So how do we do that? First of all, we must repeal Obamacare. Yes, we must repeal Obamacare and replace it with a health care system that's based on choice instead of one that's based on mandates that drives up your cost every day while protecting the elderly and the vulnerable. Number 2, we need to do away with the 4th branch of government, which is a huge bureaucracy. We need to put that under control. We have something called the REINS Act, which would, in fact, require congressional approval to pass significant regulations that are hurting our economy. And there are many other things we can do. But let me tell you that by voting record, I'm the most conservative member of our Louisiana delegation, House or Senate, without question. I am endorsed by 15 conservative and pro-growth business groups in this candidacy for Senate. So I'm not at all apologetic about that. I have A+ rating when it comes to Numbers USA on immigration. I have a 100% rating on pro-life. In fact, you know, conservatives can get things done in Washington, believe it or not, even though I've battled with my leadership. In fact, I was part of a group, the House Freedom Caucus, that forced Speaker Boehner to resign so we could get better leadership, still got things done. Just 2 weeks ago, my bill I've had since 2011, the Conscience Protection Act, which prevents health care providers and people who purchase health insurance from having to participate with abortions. We got that passed through the House. Passed the only gun bill all the way into law and in the signature of anybody in our delegation. I was able to protect Fort Polk, which we were very afraid of through sequester that we would see cuts in manpower. We've maintained that through legislation. We protected the hospital that exists on that base. Barksdale Air Force Base, it's also in my district, and by the way, I am on House Armed Services Committee. I've been there 8 years, protecting our bases and making sure that our country is safe. We were able to add a 4-star general and many other things that have made that base thrive. You see, conservatives too can get something done in Washington. So, in summary, I just want to thank you today for coming out and supporting us. This is going to be a battle royale all the way up to November 8th. 24 people in this race, believe it or not. Isn't that something? And it's going to be a media circus, I'm afraid. But it's going to be a lot of fun, folks. I just want to say in closing that it's been a great honor to serve the people of Louisiana. I look forward to doing that in the Senate, where we can do great things, where we can once again have justices in the Supreme Court who will stay with the Constitution instead of making up law as they go. I want to see that next generation have the same opportunities as me. Remember, I said early on that I'm not so sure that next generation will. But next year, with a new Congress, a new House, and a new Senate, and a new President, we can get it done. We can restore hope back to Americans who've lost it so quickly. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be in Alexandria with the mayor of Pineville and the mayor of Alexandria, Mr. Jock Roy right here, worked with me in the Senate. We work together, and he's a very smart, energetic young leader in Louisiana. He works hard, and he does a good job here. There's somebody here today that's also running for the Senate. He's not up here, but I want to introduce him. His name is Derek Edwards. He's right there, right behind you. Derek, we're glad to have you here, and hopefully we can get you to say a few words, because this man here has done a lot. As you can see, he's a lawyer, he's a very smart guy, and he's running for the United States Senate, and hopefully we'll have a little time for him to say something. I'd like to see him say something. I don't like to see people cut off from debate. I like 24 people running. Let everybody have a chance to say, and we'll get the best guy. I was elected a long time ago. I live right up the road, Highway 71, if you know where it is, right out here. I live at Elm Grove. I live on a farm. I raised my family on a farm. I'm in the cattle business. I own 2 insurance agencies, and I have a place up in Natchitoches on Cane River. And, you know, all my life, my policy is that as far as politics goes, there's no wrong way to do the right thing. You just do the right thing, and everything takes care of itself. I have equally a grieving situation with the people who lost their lives in Baton Rouge. I thought it was senseless, but when I was in the Senate, I was able to pass a bill to get $1 million for all the bulletproof vests for people all over Louisiana, and I was glad to do that because I know law enforcement needs protection, and I was glad to do that. Now, there's a lot of people running for the Senate, a whole bunch. And you'll have people who look like somebody else, and somebody says something that somebody else said. But there's just one thing I think you ought to ask all these folks. You ought to have it. It's a nice test. You need to ask them, before you tell me what you're going to do, why don't you tell me what you've done? That's a pretty good test. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what I've done in the Senate. I served the Senate 27 years. I am pro-education, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-consumer, and pro-agriculture. I am very, very proud. I live in Bossier Parish on a farm. But up in Bossier, we got a lot of gaming facilities. We have 4 or 5 of them. And when we got them, we had a pile of money coming into the school board every year. So I thought, you know, everybody says they're conservative. I'm going to show you what a real conservative can do when he has a pile of money. So I wouldn't let the school board spend the money. I passed a bill called the Bossier Educational Excellence Fund. And today, I'm telling you, no other parish in Louisiana, we have $45 million on an endowment fund that puts the money in the classroom. $45 million. I don't think there's anybody in the South that has that kind of money. And along came Mike Foster was governor, and we had a chance to sue the tobacco companies. And a lot of people didn't want to sue them. They said, oh, that was bad. And Mike Foster, by the way, don't want to do anything with tearing up the coast either. He didn't want to sue the oil companies either. He didn't want to sue any big companies. But anyway, we sued them, and we got $4 billion. And I copied my program in Bossier Parish, and today the state of Louisiana has a fund called the Educational Excellence Fund that has $1 billion in it. And every parish in Louisiana gets money every year from the interest earnings. Also, the Catholic schools get it, and the private schools get it. That's what happens when you use your head. You have a pile of money rather than just spending it all. You use your head and you endow it for public education. That money is spent in the classroom. You can't buy one football, one basketball, or one baseball. It is spent in the classroom like it should be. I am a real promoter of helping women. On the Public Service Commission, I realized that we had a real problem with domestic violence in Louisiana. So I made all the utility companies say this: if there's a woman in a problem here with domestic violence and she lives in Ellick and she wants to move to Bossier or Bogalusa or wherever she wants to move, you say, well, that's not a big deal, just get up and move. Most women in this problem have no cash, they don't have any credit, they don't have a checking account, and when they move to Bossier, it costs $500 or $600 to get all the utilities hooked up. I made the companies do that free, where they don't have any charge at all. Now, they have to pay the utility bills, but we let them move to Bossier City to get out of a bad situation, and there's no fee for checking. I also won't let utility companies cut off the electricity when it was below 32 degrees. Now, I worked too. My dad had a service station. I started when I was in the 4th grade working there, and I sold watermelons in the summer on the corner. I've been in the cattle business all my life, and I bought my first cow and a calf for $135 when I was 9 years old. After I graduated from Northwestern right up the road, I started teaching. I started a little place called Plain Dealing, Louisiana, which is the north part of Bossier Parish. I taught there, and then I moved to Houghton. And then I wanted to get in politics, and I'm glad I did. I'm one of the few that admit I'm a politician. Most folks don't want to admit that, but I'm a politician, and you're a politician too if you ran for office. I'm not ashamed of it. I've done a lot of good things. I got elected. I wanted to run for the state senate, so I ran, and there was only 8 people running that time, and I ran high, and we won. And I got elected when I was 28, one of the youngest people ever elected until Cleo Fields came along, and he got elected when he was like 21 or 22. But I was there, and I've been able to do lots of things in the legislature I did for you. But I am a champion for consumers. I'm the guy that took on payday loan companies. I think it's atrocious when people can charge 600% and 700% interest on people who borrow money. One instant we looked up outside of Fort Polk, where the rate of interest was 700% per year, charging to people. It's outrageous. I have always been a fighter. I have stood up for the consumers. I challenge people charging 24% on interest rates. I say that I am for the people's interest, not the special interest, and I have a record to prove it. Let me tell you what I'm going to do when I go to Congress. The first bill I'm going to introduce, now I'm real sick of all the congressmen. None of these have done it yet because they hadn't come home, and maybe they won't do it. But you think of all the congressmen we have, and every one of them has gone to Washington. They never come home. They stay in Washington making large amounts of money as lobbyists. I think that's troubling to me. So when I get elected, I guarantee you one thing: I don't want to be a lobbyist, and when I come home, I will come home and live like you do every day. Some of these congressmen and senators, it's almost like they get a big signing bonus for being a great athlete. They come home and they serve on particular boards for $300,000 and $400,000 a year, and they're again taking care of the special interest over the people's interest, and that is happening. You check the congressman in Louisiana, 9 out of 10 who's been there in the last few years are all on somebody's board for $300,000 or $400,000 a year. That ought to be stopped, and that's the first thing that I'll do to stop it. I'm the only candidate in this race who wasn't for Bobby Jindal. I didn't like Bobby Jindal's service to Louisiana. I fought him. Nobody up here fought Bobby Jindal. I fought him. And I didn't vote for David Vitter. And I'm not in anybody's shirt pocket. I didn't think they represented the state of Louisiana well. I think they represented their own personal agenda, and I thought they did great damage to Louisiana. We have roads in this state that are going back to gravel. We have cities underperforming. We have Northwestern up here in Grambling, that their budgets was cut 30 and 40% because one fellow wanted to run for president and he had raw ambition, robbing the state, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and did great damage to the state of Louisiana. And I never agreed with him, and I had the courage to stand up and say something about it. My message is real simple. I'll go to Washington and I'll fight for you. I know who sends me to Washington. I've been blessed in my personal life, but I'm representing the people who need help. This morning I was endorsed by the AFL-CIO, and I'm very glad to get that endorsement. I've also been endorsed by John Bell Edwards, who I helped, and who I think is doing a good job trying to get Louisiana back on its right feet. This has been a real crazy year. It's been a real crazy year, but I'm reminded of a quote of a famous president. Andrew Jackson said once, I'm not born for the, he said once that he was born for the storm and the calm does not suit him. That's the way I feel about politics. I don't mind the heat. I'll do what's right. I'll take on the special interest. That's my record. I can do the job in Washington because I've been doing it 40 years for you in Baton Rouge. Thank you very much. I need your help.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hannigan. I really appreciate the introduction. And Mayor Jacques Roy, congratulations on what you're doing here. Nice new hotel, and I'm seeing a lot of economic development right here in downtown Alexandria. Great job. And I want to applaud your partnership with the Mayor of Pineville, Mayor Fields. It's a great partnership. I've learned a little bit about what y'all are doing together. Thank you for what you do. Congratulations to Mayor Carroll BREAUX. I think you're outgoing, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
See the smile on my face?
I see the smile on your face. That's wonderful. But congratulations on an excellent job. I want to thank you and the executive board for inviting all of us to be a part of this today. And I want to offer all the best to Mayor Barney Arsenault, for the future. I hope you have a great tenure for the upcoming year. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do to build strong communities with limited resources and great challenges every single day, all across our state. Thank you. But let me just say this. Today, our communities are being torn apart. They're being torn apart by violence and racism. This is not what we're used to in America. This is not what we want in America. After the terrible incidents in Baton Rouge and around the country, we're counting on all of you, the community leaders on the front line, working with law enforcement, local law enforcement, to stand firm, to keep our families safe, to heal these divides, to pull us back together. And with local budgets under terrible stress, I can tell you one of the things I've done consistently in the 12 years I've been in Congress is to support a meager grant program called the BURN Grant Program, which provides vital resources for our law enforcement at a time when the needs are growing immensely. I've supported to increase that funding because it's necessary. As a country, I know we can do better than this. We can all do better than this. I hearken back to the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to the night already devoid of stars. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Let's think about that for a minute. We all want to be leaders. We hold leadership positions. We've had accomplishments in our lives. But we need leaders today, both at the community level, the state level, and the federal level, more than ever, who are willing to listen to all sides, to restore trust in government at every level, and to restore trust and respect for law enforcement. I do believe we can get there, and I want to partner with you. Because strong communities mean a strong Louisiana, and a strong Louisiana certainly means strong communities. And we have to do it community by community. But I'll tell you this, strong communities also require well-developed roads and highways and bridges and infrastructure. As a senior member of the House Ways and Means Committee, I've been a leader in finding sustainable funding solutions for our highways in Louisiana. And I don't need to tell you about the problems. We all know it. We drive these roads every single day. This is critical for our state. We're not going to move our state forward with a 21st century economy with early 20th century infrastructure. It's just not going to happen. Last year, a transportation think tank that's very respected found that an astounding 16% of rural bridges in Louisiana were structurally deficient, 8th highest in the nation. We can do better than this. We can only listen to Washington argue and delay action for so long before people start getting hurt. This affects small business. It affects our industries. It affects agriculture and shipping. All the things that are necessary to grow a good economy in this state. I'm the only one in this race, this year's Senate race, who has voted repeatedly and responsibly to fund our roads and bridges. I've worked on those highway bills, worked to make them better, and worked to make sure that we get those funds into Louisiana and that they're used appropriately. How can you be for Louisiana if you're against the infrastructure and roads that support jobs in our economies? And strong communities also mean affordable and available housing. In Louisiana, that means reasonable flood insurance rates and not massive spikes in prices and premiums that put citizens in a situation where they have to choose whether or not to leave their house. This is just unacceptable in our state. I represent most of coastal Louisiana, and I've seen this. Under the legislation, the flood insurance reauthorization that got passed a couple of years ago, the FEMA and Army Corps of Engineers took it upon themselves to start redrawing the flood insurance maps. You all know this at the local level. You've been fighting it. And they took this one-size-fits-all. They didn't take into account local flood measures and so forth. And what did we get? We got typical Washington solutions, resulting in very high premium spikes. This resulted in throwing the Louisiana housing market into crisis and causing huge spikes for homeowners. I worked very closely together with Steve Scalise and Bill Cassidy to get a law passed by the hardest to help blunt these effects. We bought some time. I can tell you there are candidates in this race that voted against Louisiana homeowners and voted to throw them on the streets because special interests gave them marching orders. As these maps continue to be redrawn, now more than ever, you need to remain vigilant and work with us so that your voice is heard in this. And your voices were heard in the last fight when we did reauthorize this. 2017 is going to be a tough year, and we're going to have to reauthorize it. By God, we're going to need your help. We got to reauthorize the flood insurance program. And we need leaders in Washington who understand the importance of this issue to our communities and who will fight for Louisiana, not Washington's special interest. You're going to be faced with a very important election this fall. And if you think these issues are not on the ballot, you're wrong. What's going to be needed is a U.S. Senator for this state who will stand with you. Stand up to the special interest. I've done it time and time again. That's why I'm running for the United States Senate. I believe the stakes are too high to send someone to the Senate who doesn't understand what it means if we fail to build strong communities, build our infrastructure, have strong home ownership and affordable premiums, and can have the basic substrate in place for job creation for the private sector to move forward. There are a lot of other things we can do, but I can tell you these things are critical for our state. That's been my record in the U.S. House of Representatives, fighting and fighting smart to get these things done. I've never been afraid to go against a president, Republican or Democrat, leadership in the House or Senate, Republican or Democrat. I've done it time and time again. I've got numerous examples I can point to. And I fought those special interests, as I've said, because I work for you. I think that's got to be first and foremost. You elect us to represent you and to work for you. That's what you've got to expect from your elected officials. That's what you expect from your next United States Senator. I need your support to ensure that you have a leader at the table when these issues are going to come before the U.S. Senate in the near future. And as I travel from Abbeville to Zwolle to see this great state firsthand, travel those roads, look at those homes, meet the people face to face, eye to eye, I certainly look forward to meeting with each and every one of you to hear your concerns, to help you, to be there as a partner. I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trails soon, and I'm going to ask for your support on November 8th. Thank you very much.
I'm not anybody's shirt pocket. That's what's the difference. I don't belong to anybody. I've got a 40-year record of being independent, taking on all kind of folks, from railroads to payday loan companies, to utility companies. Education, I've created billion-dollar educational funds. And today, I was just endorsed by the AFL-CIO, which I'm very appreciative of, and I've been endorsed by Governor John Bell Edwards. So I'm very happy with our position in this campaign. We're working hard, hoping people know my record, and I'm running on my record of being independent and getting things done.
My job is not to have other politicians like me. I try to get along with everybody, and I think I do. I try not to be rude. But I'm going to speak my mind. We're not going to improve America unless we do. We don't have time for political correctness. We got to call it like we see it. And Washington, D.C. is broken. The United States Congress has some good people in it. But as a group, for the past 8 years, I can't figure out what they've been good for.
I think first and foremost, I'm not philosophically opposed to doing what I need to do to make sure Louisiana is at the table in all the important funding discussions that go on in Washington, D.C. Some of my opponents actually don't believe government is a good thing and can't really do much for people. That probably is the key difference. That, and I must also say, obviously, I'm a 37-year-old female running for United States Senate. It makes me look a little bit different than the other crop of characters.
After I survived the attack on 9/11, I was asked to help plan the initial response on the global war on terror. So I know who the enemy is, and I can call it what it is. It's Islamic jihadism. They're now in the Islamic State. We need to find them. We need to target them, and we need to kill them as rapidly as possible. And I'm the only person in this race that's qualified to do that.
Well, I'm a conservative who has gotten results. I can point to legislative achievements that have become law, that have helped us across the board, whether it's on tax policy and lowering taxes, health care. I've gotten legislation passed on protecting our seafood industry and enforcing our trade laws, securing 2 new veterans clinics for the 3rd Congressional District. I've gotten real results, and that's what distinguishes me.
I'm conservative by voting record, but also I'm a reformer. I co-founded the House Freedom Caucus. It forced Speaker Boehner to resign so we get better leadership and finally get Washington working for the people.